we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. For the second hour of the broadcast, I'm talking with my guest, Chad Taylor. And right before the break, Chad, you were describing the process of writing the book much like restoring a car.
Yeah. It's just the amount of dedication into things like that. It's just a matter of, and that was back in my 20s and teens, actually. And just that same amount of dedication. I've learned over time what not to waste your time on. And just a matter of taking that same mindset and that same dedication and just being productive with it. And that's, what I've done with starting different businesses and then, applied to this book is that same kind of that work habit and that ethic to just get the job done. So.
Now, what's your wife thinking during all of this? Did she come along on the same page with you, or was she going, "What are you doing this for?" Or supportive, or what?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. My wife, I really don't think she could have been more supportive. She's, growing up. I remember back in high school and after high school, just through these phases, and I was praying for God to give me somebody. And I would just describe this person. It was this longing, and I was very, very lonely back then in those times. And, I'm glad he didn't bring her to me back then, because I absolutely would have, I was way too immature. Fast forward, I don't even remember what year we met, but fast forward into the future, he gave me the woman that I wanted and then some, and she's super supportive. She's so awesome. And through this whole process and all the hours that I've been away from her, and our little kiddo, she's never complained once about it. And on this topic, I told her about it, back in 2015. I told her about the subject, and she has such a childlike spirit where she's like, well, that's what the Bible says. I believe it.
That was my wife.
Yeah.
And in fact, she was getting angry at me because I was making such a rock solid case from Scripture, like preaching it everywhere, talking about it all the time on radio shows and making videos about it, but still was internally struggling with it myself, and even externally not committing. For the better part of that first year, I was calling myself a zetetic agnostic, and like, look, I'm proceeding with inquiry and investigation. I'm still questioning. I'm not fully convinced. I am convinced the Scriptures say what they say, but, as for me, I'm having a difficult time with this here, And she's like, look, man, Bible says that, I believe it. When are you going to wake up? Which made it, on the one hand, she was, calling me out, but, on another, I didn't have to deal with a spouse that was calling me crazy and thinking, you're stupid. Oh my God, I got to leave this guy because he's insane, which, unfortunately has happened to a lot of people. They have one spouse that sort of goes down the path and the others, no.
Yeah.
So you were clearly blessed with the right woman in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, in the back of the book also on this subject, I have a step-by-step process of sharing this book with others. And it's not only this book, it also, you could apply it to this, just sharing the subject with others. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've had growing up was long time ago. My first serious girlfriend, she was a Jehovah's Witness, and I was, grew up Lutheran. And we were both, just hypocrites, really. I mean, playing house and whatever. And we got to the point where we were, where it was like, okay, we've been together long enough. The next step is, okay, are you going to be Jehovah's Witness or are you going to be Lutheran? You know what I mean? We were at that step where, we were just kids. We should have just, that should have been one of the first things we talked about, not a couple years later. But anyway, and she didn't know this, but I spent weeks and weeks researching Jehovah's Witnesses and learning all this kinds of things and learning all the backstory that Jehovah's Witnesses, that 99.9% of them probably don't even know. And literally one night I was like, honey, not honey, I never called her that, but, let's sit down and we'll talk. We'll have this discussion. And okay, we sat down, and she was all happy. We're going to have this nice discussion. And I hammered her with point after point after point about how I was right and she was wrong. And it was like, and in my mind, I didn't do it mean, but in hindsight, it was mean how I approached that subject. I was very, it was pride, and it was me proving I was right. And I thought I could give her enough facts and details to where she would go, oh, you know what? You're right. But in my mind, nowadays, looking back, it's like I was trying to convince her in 10 minutes that something she's grown up believing her entire life is wrong. And it's not going to happen like that. And it doesn't happen that way. And I think one mistake that we could do is talk to our loved ones and people that we care about and try to hammer them with details and prove that we're right out the get-go. And it doesn't, I've got to tell you, there's a much better way than doing that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it's all described at the end of the book of how this process is. And, it's a matter of having empathy and trying to see things from the other person's point of view and asking questions. And when you do things of a point of trying to help them and ask them questions to where they go, oh, that's a good question. How do you do that? Or why is it this way or that? And instead of proving your point, allow them to come to their own conclusions. Yeah. And it's approaching things humble versus prideful. So.
Well, yeah, I had a mentor when I was doing a lot of early public speaking, and he was talking about the Socratic method of what you're saying, asking questions instead of trying to tell people. And the way he worded it is like, I could tell you something, but to you, hearing me tell you something, that is just your view is of the other person who's telling you something. Well, that's just their opinion, and you can accept it or reject it. But if I do a really good job of asking you the questions to get you to give me the answer that I would have otherwise told you, well, then all of a sudden now you own it. Mm-hmm. It's your truth because it came out of your mouth.
Yeah.
So if I can figure out how to ask the right questions to get you to give me the answers I would have otherwise told you, well, okay, there we go. Mm-hmm. And so you've taken that approach with the book?
Yeah, in the very end of the book, I actually didn't know there was a term for this, but at the very end of the book, it's just I have a 5-step process for sharing this. And there's different things I've done in the years past, different businesses and different things like that, where I've had to deal with a lot of people and had to learn people skills and get good at people skills. And I kind of break down a lot of the things I've learned into how to share this. And I made this book to where the average person could sit down and go, whoa, okay, this makes sense. Or somebody that really wants to know more detail. I kind of made it to where it's got both, but to where it's not overwhelming. And then in the end, okay, now that you're interested and now that you've learned all these details, well, how are you going to share this with somebody? Because by the time you get through the book, you're probably going to want to share this with somebody. Well, how do you do it? And then so I have a 5 simple steps at the very end of the book for how you share this with people. Because I really view the book this way, is that, I view it as a tool, and I view it as a flashlight in particular because it shines light on the subject. And a flashlight works great for that, but it works terrible for pounding in a nail. And so my point is I encourage people not to use this book to beat people over the head and say, see, look here. I told you I'm right, you're wrong. Because that is absolutely not the way to do it, because you will not, it's not going to work. Don't do it that way. And it's a matter of having empathy, and whether you've been talking to a spouse or a loved one or whoever about the subject, is allowing them to come to their own conclusions, just like you're talking about there. It's such an important thing, just to allow people to, come to their own conclusions.
Yeah. Now, of course, the title of the book is Where Are We, Earth According to the Bible? It's nearly 300 pages long, and just almost page after page after page loaded with scripture. So this has a very, obviously a pretty targeted audience in that regard. How much did you get into the mechanics of how all this works compared to the heliocentric globular Earth model, or were you just primarily just focused on, biblical apologetics?
Yeah, no, great question. My my purpose through this was, okay, let me back up just a hair. Is when I was doing research on this, I looked at, I ordered the handful of books that were available on the subject, and I don't want to badmouth anybody else's work by any means, but just a couple, and I don't want to paint a broad brush, but some of the things I kept seeing was, a lot of opinions right out the gate and a lot of red flags for people. And I don't want to, that wasn't everybody by any means, so don't get me wrong. But what I don't want to do is have people throwing up red flags right off the gate. That's why in the cover, it's got a globe earth. And then, with the question mark, like it's the, the drop a pin question mark thing there, that also has the, the flat earth below it, to where it's not going to throw up any red flags to people. And my point is that for every single person that wants to know what does the Bible say on this subject, I don't get into my opinions or my understandings and get right out the gate and say, my opinion is the earth is flat. Here's proof. It's mostly, what does the Bible say? I'm not going to tell you what I think it says. Here, what does it say? And so as we get into Genesis, well, here's Genesis day 1. Here's what it says. Here's what it says in visual. And I have everything lined out with dictionary terms. And I do that because a lot of people might miss the certain words like above, up, below, descend, ascend, all these different words that are used over and over and over. And then what is a simplified picture of what is being said in those verses. And so every 101 of those different examples, they each have their own image right beside it that show in simplified terms, what is it saying? And it's the book just came out, but it's amazing how, I've watched different people read it and how they're like, interesting. I haven't been getting objections like, no, it doesn't say that, because we've taken you through Genesis day 1, day 2, through every step of the way, and it goes in order that you find the book in the Bible. And the reason I didn't do it in chronological order, because I've heard most people say Job is the oldest, so why not start with Job? Well, then some people are going to disagree with that, but I don't think anybody can disagree with, okay, Genesis, then Exodus, then Leviticus. So it's in the order it's found in the Bible of what does it say. And to where it's not just for people that get into the flat earth subject. It's for everybody, to where if you want to know what the Bible says, here it is, day 1, day 2, and then it goes on throughout the rest of the Bible.
Now, I noticed you use multiple Bible versions. Why did you do that and use dictionary definitions and things like that?
Yeah, great question. Actually, it's your fault, too, for the Bible versions. No, I'm just joking. Back in... it would have been early 2015 or so. I remember you telling, your audience about doing parallel Bibles. And because I'd gone from, originally going from NRSV growing up, and then to New King James, then to King James Version. And then I remember hearing your testimony about parallel Bibles. And so back in, before this subject ever came on the radar, I got a parallel Bible. And I love parallel Bibles. The one I have now, it's King James, New King James, NIV, and New Living Translation.
Yeah, that's a great combo right there.
Yeah.
I have a 4 parallel like that, very similar. And my absolute favorite is a 2 parallel. It has King James and New Living side by side.
Mm-hmm.
So you get what is claimed to be a literal word for word translation of King James, which it is not. And what is claimed to be a thought for thought translation, which I would contend also is not necessarily true in a broad stroke sense anyway. But I love the contrast between those two. You read it in one and it conveys maybe something not so clear, and it just seems so much clearer when you look at the other, or vice versa.
Yeah.
I actually love that combination, the King James and the New Living.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And just having the parallel Bibles and not being super stubborn about, I only read from this one version. It's been very nice to, what does this say in different versions? And actually, so in the book, I have 4 different versions. I have the, I have the King James, NIV, ESV, and the NRSV for every version. The reason I did the King James, NIV, and ESV is, from my research, those seem like the 3 most common Bibles today. The NRSV is the one that I grew up with, and the one that I talk about in the beginning of the book in the introduction. And then I also add the New Living Translation on various versions as well. As a side note, I am kind of the ESV, from my research throughout all this, I'm very impressed with what the ESV has said also. It seems really kind of well-rounded. I don't know a lot of the history about it, but it seems like a nice, well-rounded version. Just, I don't know, side note. I don't necessarily have a favorite. I just like to look at different versions. Now, regarding, so the layout of the book, so all the different versions have the words underlined, are defined. And so I have dictionary definitions of every word that's underlined in each of the verses. And then I have different phrases highlighted as well, just to kind of draw your attention to, hey, look at what this is saying right here. And then on the opposite side of the page, I have the images showing, what is being described. And like it's important to understand, too, this is a simplified version. It's not to scale, nor is it possible to have this at scale. But it's a very simplified version. And also on the dictionary definitions, by every definition, if you take that and go to the back of the book, it says, so for instance, this is tabernacle, a dwelling place, and then see page 291. Well, if you go back, I have a dictionary section of 4 pages. In that section, it's like a cross-reference, so you can see every page that the word tabernacle is on, or every page that the word above is on, or every page the word firmament is on. And yes, that did take a lot of time to do that. So.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm looking at it right now going, wow, that's, did you have any, I think there's some indexing software out there that helps make it a little easier, or did you actually just physically make notes and count? And
Yeah, I did it the hard way.
Oh,
so.
wow.
No,
that's a labor of love right there, man.
Yeah, I didn't know how else to do it. So I figured, I go, you know what? I'll bet you there's an easier way to do this, but I don't know what it is. So I'll just put my head down and get her done.
Wow.
So, and a lot of double checking and rechecking. And, if by the way, also, if anybody notices any errors by any means, it was supposed to be 290, not page 291, just email me. But I have been over this thing more times than I can count, just to, I want to put the best thing out there. I'm kind of a perfectionist by nature. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The perfectionists typically don't get things done usually, but it's just, I worked my best, and I had to, I want to put the best product out there. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I have no regrets with this. I cannot say that, I wish I'd have done this better. I absolutely did the best that I possibly knew how to do. Or actually, let me put it this way. The best that I didn't know how to do, I just put the best out there that I could do. So,
well, I'll say, I'll just be upfront. I haven't read the book yet. I have thumbed through it, skimmed over pages, and, got a feel for what the book is about and how it's laid out. And just at that level, it's outstanding. I mean, it is the book I wish I had time to put together. I mean, but I'm like, well, okay, great. I don't have to now. Yoo-hoo!
Yeah, exactly.
Because when I got into this, believe me, I had ambitions of doing something like this very early on. But I have so many other projects going on that, I joke about it. I'm like, I can never die, because I have way too many unfinished projects that I've got to get done.
Yeah.
So this was when I saw what it was, there was, I got to be honest with you, there was a huge sigh of relief that I was like, because I felt like somebody needed to do this, because especially I get a lot of requests for, resources. Do you have resources for homeschoolers?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing really out there, certainly on this subject, from a biblical worldview, and certainly not laid out in as thorough as what you have here. So, people were trying to get me to take my website and turn it into a book, and I actually started working on it. My wife she's a graphic designer also, and her background is in print. So she actually began the process of, and my book also is about 300 pages, laying it all out. And I put it up online. It's online for free as a PDF right now. uh, what I intended to do with it. But I mean, this is just outstanding. So once again, for our listeners, if they're interested in checking it out, where can they go to get your book?
Yeah, you can go to wherearewethebook.com.
Now, is this also available on Amazon if people just searched for it?
Yep, absolutely.
You published through Amazon, didn't you?
Yeah, published through CreateSpace. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
CreateSpace. What a amazingly wonderful tool that is, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, I've had people, since I've done this, just recently people, friends of mine go, wow, I didn't know you were doing a book. Because I kept this really, tight-lipped, while I was doing this. And it's amazing how many people want to do it. And I encourage people. It couldn't be easier, I don't think, to do all this. It's amazing.
Writing the book and editing and formatting, and that's the hard part. But publishing, that's they have made it so incredibly easy. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you're going to all of a sudden make lots of money selling books, because once you publish, you gotta get the word out. I mean, you gotta do this.
Yep.
Frankly, I mean, you gotta get on radio shows, and have you been on any other radio shows?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is
for the
first
time. All right. On the Revolutionary Radio Project. Well, I mean, I do get a lot of stuff sent to me, and I try to look at stuff, but this one just really caught my attention. I mean, immediately after I opened the package. And of course, when I thumbed through in the back, I saw that you mentioned me. I'm like, whoa, hey, let's talk. All right. But, really, thank you for doing this. This is a wonderful resource. And again, I just highly recommend people check it out. Do you have samples for people to look at? Or do you have a website? Well, you mentioned the website. It's the name of the book, basically. Wherearewethebook.com. And do you, I know you have a few videos out on it.
Yeah. I just have a few intro videos. They don't really get into the guts of the book, but let's see, if you go on Amazon, you can go through the site as well. You can hit the purchase; it'll bring you to the actual book on Amazon. And on there, if you click on the ebook version, it'll see a show inside, and you can kind of you can read some. It doesn't really get into a lot of the images though. But yeah, as of right now, I haven't, that's a good idea. I might put out different samples on the site or something like that. I haven't got that far yet.
Well, in all your spare time, I would suggest just putting out, some YouTube videos on your content. I tell people all the time, look, I have 10 books in print right now and about as many DVDs out. But all of my material is available for free online. All of my books came out of blogs that I wrote. So if you want to, read the blog, well, you're reading the book. The book came from the blog. And, I found that the more that I put out for free for everybody, the better.
That's great.
So,
yeah.
In the beginning, my radio show started with me basically just reading my book for the public.
and it's interesting too, you say YouTube, because I've actually just recently started to get all that stuff for doing YouTube videos. I just got a nice camera and got all this other setup. So I do, that's my next step, was actually to do more YouTube stuff. And that's funny you mentioned that. Well,
I would highly recommend that you do that. I think it would only benefit you and certainly everybody else out there. I mean, this content needs to get out there. We got a few minutes before we go to the next break here. I noticed you sort of took this solo scriptura, only scripture approach. You didn't use other resources, external, extra biblical resources, the Book of Enoch and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Was that conscious?
My first thing, talking about being a perfectionist, is my first instinct was to include the Book of Enoch and delve into that, and also have concordance, for different words, and to really bring it to more where it would almost only really appeal to people that were serious researchers of the subject. And I think that was my desire at first. And then I started going, whoa, okay, 99% of people have probably never heard of the Book of Enoch. And what this, like you mentioned, is I think what was lacking, and there's a big vacuum for it, is what does the Bible say 101? What does not, okay, without going into all these other bigger, or different avenues, just bring it down, plain Jane. what does the Bible say in plain English? What does it describe? And in a form that you can just hand somebody. And so, yeah, originally I thought about going that route. And I don't have a lot of experience in the book of Enoch or Jasher or anything like that. That hasn't been my forte or anything, but I considered adding that, but I ended up not doing that. But just because...
Well, you would have doubled the size of your book if you did.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I just...
book.
And I just feel like, that's, the next book for, 201 or something, for part 2 or, things like that. Absolutely. But it just needs to be a very simple, what does it say? And then we can go from here. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, right on. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and take a break here, and we'll talk some more when we come back for the final segment of the broadcast.